All right, all right. So this is our poem report, guys. Right, this is our poem report. I'm gonna try to make some room on this template, right? And what I want to do in the next hour, guys, is go over the different columns and discuss what they mean. Go ahead. I'm gonna hide these rows just because they're just headings, and I just want a little bit of real estate on my board on my screen. So I'm gonna exit out of here, move this up some, this aside. All right. Again, FedRAMP, they do a pretty good job of trying to explain to you what these documents are, right, when they create their templates. All right, so we're gonna start from the top, right? The poem ID, right? This is the title of the column, right? They tell you exactly what you're supposed to place here, right? The poem ID is basically a unique identifier. This is an example. This is basically them describing what you need to put there, and then they will put an example in the third row. I'm sorry, they put an example in the fourth row. Well, I'm sorry, they put an example really in the third and fourth row. Like this is more of a objective form. They put the format here, and they give you a specific example here, right? If that makes sense. So what I like to do is I like to not use so much space. Yeah, so I want you guys to be able to see the example, but at the same time, I don't want to have all the spaces, for example. So I'm just gonna. All right, so the first item is the poem ID, right? And here they're telling you, hey, just a unique identifier. If you guys recall for your SSP, a unique identifier is basically just a number, or I'm sorry, an identification for anything, for any object, right? Like if you have a system, your unique identifier for our system is called the RISEN network, RISEN. It's our unique identifier because we know when we see that, we know we're talking about PGA Pro's general support system, right? So the same thing for poem, right? Well, which poem ID is this? Well, this is what is your unique identifier? How does your organization list out the poem? So your organization can be P, and maybe you start at 1001, and then the next poem item will be P1002. It doesn't matter what a unique identifier is, just unique to your organization. People at your organization know, hey, this is how we label poems, and that's all it is. Don't overthink that. That's just all it means, right? So for the you know, however your organization wants to identify your poems, that's how you do it here, right? The control, right? They're asking about the control. This is the control number. So let me go ahead and pull up the SAR real quick. Quickly, we downloaded that yesterday. For it. There we go. Okay. So, I haven't received those, so probably. I did. Here we do again. Giving IA control. Nope, never saved it. Okay. So, anyways, the control ID is pretty much right here, right? So let's go over. Apparently, I didn't save the work that we did yesterday, which was not good. I guess I just rolled out of here, huh? What did we do? We did the IA controls, IA 401, right?
Yep.
Okay. What was it again? It was right, it was this one, manage identifier. Okay, and we had said okay. Let's pick a different one. It'd be good to have a change of topic, right? Let's pick a different one. We'll go over one. I'm just gonna quickly go over one that has a secure weakness, and then we'll go ahead and add as a POAM, right? So let's pick one that makes sense. It's not too complicated so that the translation doesn't throw anybody off. Okay, so let's pick this one, MP6A1, right? And the assessment objective on this SAR says, determine if the organization defines information system media to be sanitized prior to disposal, release out of organizational control, or release for reuse, right? All right, so the first question is system media, right? What are system media? You have digital media, you have non-digital media. Digital media is there's like your hard drive, your cell phone to be organized media, your flash drive. Non-digital will be something like paper, right? Those are your media, right? The things that are mobile, the things that can move around, your laptop, those are digital system media, right? They're portable, mobile system information systems that can easily get lost on the metro. If you get off work and you leave it sitting on a train, it gets lost. We don't really care about the media, but we care about the data that's inside of it, right? So we want to make so this whole control family is called media protection, MP, because it talks about protecting your media. This particular objective is saying, hey, with those media, right, are they sanitized? Sanitized means cleaned, right? Meaning digitally clean. And when something's digitally clean, it means there's no data left inside of it, right? Sanitization doesn't just stop at, oh, I hit the delete, right? Just because you hit a delete on a file doesn't mean the file is gone. Because sometimes if I have the right tools, I can still extract data. Sometimes it requires a little bit deeper cleaning, right? Sometimes things like degaussing or destroying the media with like a sledgehammer or something like they're shredding it, right? To make sure that it's completely destroyed, right? So that's what I mean by sanitize. Sanitize means to remove the data and make it completely non-recoverable, depending on how sensitive the data is, right? So again, this control is talking about system media, right, being sanitized prior to what? Prior to you getting rid of it. It's important that you do that because, you know, if you put something in the trash, somebody go dumpster diving and they pick out your hard drive because you threw it away, or you threw away your laptop and you forgot to clean out your hard drive. Well, before you dispose of it, you need to make sure that your media is fully sanitized. Released out of organizational control, right? Maybe it's not disposed, maybe you give it away, right? Maybe you sell it. The federal government, I don't know if you guys ever been to the federal government resale store, but they like get rid of technology and people can buy them, right, for cheap, right? So they might release it out of their control. And so one of the things that we did when I worked for the federal agency is we went through like thousands of laptops and we took out the hard drive. And we had the hard drive shredded, and then we give the laptop to whatever that the name of that store was, and they sell them for cheap, right? And then so you want to make sure that there's that favorite word again, define, right? Determine the organization, define the media that will be cleaned or erased properly before it is disposed, before you trash it, before you release it out of the organization, right? Give it to somebody else, or before it's released for reuse. Why would we care about reusing it? Well, if I gave a laptop to Rael and then Rael no longer worked for PJ Pros, and now I want to give the same laptop to Jason, right? I need to make sure that that media is being cleaned properly so that Jason doesn't have access to Rael's information, right? So we need to, there should be some type of define written on a formal document. It needs to be written on how we sanitize that media before these three things are being done, okay? In this scenario, let's say that upon testing, I looked at the media protection policy, and the policy said prior to disposal, well, first of all, you need to define what media you have in your network, right? Don't just go, oh yeah, all digital media, right? Well, that means you haven't really thought about it. You know, you might have talked about hard drive, but then you talk about paper, right? Get in the details of it. So my first question would be, what are the media that we support on our network? If you haven't quantified that, because it's not an unlimited amount. There's no unlimited amount of types of media out there. And you should know, right? It's your job to know, at least the ISO's job to know, excuse me, right? So let's say in this scenario, the media types that PJ Pro support are flash drives, hard drives, mobile devices, computers, right? And paper, okay? That's it. We don't support any other media. Our flash drives are encrypted, right? Our hard drives, are inside the laptops, and then we have our laptops and our mobile devices, our phones, our Android phones that we support. Right, that's all the media we have. There's no other media that we support here. Everything else is pretty much staple. Now, before they are disposed, all these things are required to be destroyed, right? Either shredded by a third-party company, or they're required for someone to use a sledgehammer and make sure that they are completely destroyed. We're perfectly fine with those two methodologies. Now, if we're going to release it outside of our control, it is important that we extract the hard drive out of all media, or the data actually needs to be destroyed. The actual device itself can be released for whatever reason, as long as it's approved by the authorizing official, right? That's where it's written in our media protection policy. And the release for reuse, right? If we're going to switch a media from one person to another, the device must be re-imaged, right? So whether it's our encrypted flash drives, phones, or laptop, it needs to be re-imaged before it is reused or reissued to another employee. Okay, and that's it. That's what is being defined in our policy, right? I'm not going to pull up the paper, but I hope you follow me on what the definition is. Okay. So now, me knowing that, or me having read the media protection policy, right? I'm supposed to make this fail. Excuse me. Crap. All right. So let's say it doesn't talk about release for reuse. Okay. So back to my scenario, right? We talked about disposal, right? We talked about release outside of organization. Well, let's pretend that there was nothing about release for reuse, right? It was not defined in the media protection policy, right? So in my observation, right, I'm going to do an examination of the media protection policy, and the date is 3/8/2023 at 7:21 p.m. Upon a review of the PJ Pro's media protection policy, it was determined that all system media, I'm going to put mobile phones, flash drives, laptops, and hard drives must be shredded or destroyed with a sledgehammer prior to disposal. And then if a digital media will be released out of organizational control, the medium containing used to store data, see hard drive and memory card, must be destroyed by shredded or sledgehammer, right? And the media protection policy does not address the sanitization requirement for media prior to release for reuse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to leave it at that. And then I'm going to reference my artifact, which is PJ Pro's media protection policy.pdf. And you should also reference the page which this evidence can be found. So we'll say maybe page 4 or maybe section D or something like that, right? You want to also, make a reference. This is what gives you a thorough analysis. This is what stops anyone from contesting your assessment or the quality of your assessment, right, guys? You want to speak specifics because then it shows that you are in fact assessing this thing. I can't tell you how many SARs are out there where people simply take this, they copy and paste it, right? And it's just not effective in my opinion. The implementation status in this case is partially implemented. The assessment result is other than satisfied because of that third component that is missing. Identified risk. Now, what risk should we put on here? I'm going to put up my NIST 863-3 again. For those that were here, what was it, yesterday? Right, that's my recommended go-to. For those of you guys that don't really know what risk are, right? I've always told you guys, just come to this document real quick and go to one of the charts. There's a video on digital identity if you want to know more about this document. This is actually something that you need to put you guys SP. A lot of people don't know how to do it, so you should check out the video for that one. But anyways, now let's think about it. If we don't really define how media should be sanitized prior to reuse, in my mind, again, now we're going to an opinion. In my mind, if I take Rael's old computer and I give it to Jason for use, I don't remove all of Rael's information, and now Jason has access to it, right? It might be an authorized release of sensitive information, like her personal information. She might have like a personal document on there or something. So I think that's the best argument in terms of risk. So I'm going to use that, unauthorized release of sensitive information. All right, the likelihood level. What is the likelihood of hacker Jason getting out in Rael's business? I'll say the likelihood is, well, actually, if I don't sanitize or modify it, but then you still have access control. So I would say low, because he really has to do some directory traversal, right, to really get in there. He has to be intentional about it. So when it be an accident, otherwise I make it moderate. Impact level of that happening, if it were to happen, I think it'd be moderate. Just my opinion. Again, it's up to the system owner. The risk statement, I'm just going to explain exactly what I was just thinking. Because the process for sanitizing media prior to reuse is not defined, the organization is at risk of not sanitizing media properly. This could lead to the recipients of the media gaining access to the prior recipient data. This could lead to a breach of sensitive corporate and or personal data, right? Again, my thoughts being put in a formal document, right? If you're someone that don't know how to write formally, practice makes perfect, right? Don't start writing, and don't start using formal languages, right? I've seen people using formal languages and they write things like, if someone don't clean up their stuff, right? I mean, maybe it's not that bad. I've never seen anybody do it that bad. But you get what I'm saying. Don't clean up their stuff, then someone else can get all up in their business, right? It's never that bad, but I just want to kind of wake you guys up, right? But I've seen it being used where people they don't write formal languages, right? They don't use formal words, right? You don't talk like you're talking to your friends. You talk like it's
like a slang, like slang.
Exactly.
That's the language, slang.
Exactly, slang, right?
Yeah.
So you guys want to be careful with that. I've seen that in some places, very slight touch of informality. Be careful with that. It creates a bad impression if someone were to audit your work. Recommendation for mitigation is real simple, right? Update the media protection policy to include the process for sanitizing media upon reuse, upon release for reuse. Okay, and then we'll say the SSP implementation statement was good, so no differential, right? Oh wow, this one's actually working this time. So I put my name on this one. And then prior assessments, we'll say this is the first year, so we'll leave that alone. And that's it, right? We're done with the STAR. Now let's go to what we're actually here to do, which is the POAM report, right? So we have this, right? We've done this. We've done it for all the security controls up and down, every single control family. I know it's a lot. It gets faster over time, right? You get faster with each one over time. If I was in my own head, I would have done this a lot faster. But anyways, we're done with all the controls, right? We simply filter out all the ones that are not partially implemented or not, or other than satisfied, right? And then we start extracting them and put them into our POAM report. Okay, so I'm going to move this aside so we can now focus on our POAM report. Now that we all can feel what the problem is, the scare weakness, and now we need to put it onto our plan of action and milestone. All right, let's do it. Right, again, unique identifier is a POAM ID. What is a control number, right? The control number for this particular weakness is written here, right? This is the control number, right? MP6. So we're going to put that here, right? I'm not going to split screen because I think some people might not be able to see this. So control number is MP6, right? Name of the weakness as provided by scanner or otherwise, right? So this is a weakness name. They're telling you if you did a scan, because, and by the way, guys, a POAM is not, a POAM item is not always necessarily from a security control assessment. It's not really always from an A&A work. I could be walking down the hall and trip on a rock. If I see it's a security weakness that need to be POAMed, I could put it on a POAM. A POAM is the hub which contains all security weaknesses that are discovered from all different sources, right? So I don't want people to think, oh, this is just A&A work. No, it's something that you maintain all year long, even doing continuous monitoring. But anyways, and that's why they say it could be from a scanner because you might have run a vulnerability scan, right? In this case, what is the weakness name, right? Give a name that is succinct, something short and sweet, but makes sense, right? Media protection policy update. Policy does not reflect sanitization condition for release for reuse of media types. Oh, and by the way, I think I messed up here because I didn't address paper. I addressed paper. No, I didn't. Okay, so I need to talk about paper. Right? And, well, I think people understand you can't sledgehammer paper, you can just shred it. But, yeah. All right, so try to make it short and sweet, right? Is really the key, right? For the weakness name. Right? The next item, weakness description. Maybe, you know what I'm thinking? There's really no wrong way to do this, and I think what I usually do. Fine. Now, this is usually the shorthand, and this is the longhand version, right? So I'm trying to find. I'm starting to think. I'm gonna delete this, right? And I'm gonna use maybe some of the assessment objective language, rather than because I feel like this is more of a description. So I'm gonna say define. Define I'm just going to copy the objective over in this case. Define information system media to be sanitized prior to release for reuse, right? So I'm just going to use their language there. Okay, it makes sense to me. I'm good with that. And then for this part, I'm going to put and then I'm going to go into details here, right? And saying the media protection policy does not reflect sensitization condition for reuse of media types. Media types include, it's gonna be a little extra, but that's okay. I don't mind doing a little extra. Right. Can imagine. I'm not gonna put paper here because I can't imagine why we want to reuse a piece of paper, right? Unless it's a transfer of documents. Okay. Gotta love Excel, right? All right, so that is my description. My description is just simply an elaboration of the weakness name, right? This is a shorthand version, quick and easy read. This is more, give you more context, more details. And then the next thing is weakness, detect the source. As I mentioned before, the source of this weakness, of how you detect this weakness could be anything really, right? In this case, it was a security control assessment, right? Maybe I might put the year, right? 2023. As long as I'm consistent, you know, throughout other POAM, I think it's fine. Really don't. As long as it just spells out what it is that you're doing. Weakness source identifier, right? So this is the example to give here is vulnerability identifier. If you like running a scan, it's a plugin ID. For me personally, I like to use the assessment procedure number, because then that helps me to be able to trace it back to the actual assessment. And in this case, the assessment procedure, I think it makes sense to me as an identifier because it goes straight, it identifies the security control number, which this came out of. Asset identifier. This is where you identify specify specified in inventory, right? This is asset that are associated with the weakness. There are no assets, right? I mean, there's a media protection policy, but there's no real asset. There's no like server being impacted by this. There's no building. There's no real equipment. So here I'm going to leave it blank because it's just not relevant, right? So I'm going to probably say none, right? Just be consistent, right? So I'm going to put none. As long as your organization is consistent, if you do none for everything, one thing, do none for everything. If you leave it blank for one thing, leave it blank for everything, right? Just be consistent in your documentation, you're fine. Point of contact, who is responsible for fixing this, right? Let's say, in this case, more than likely, because it's a document update that's needed, it's usually the ISO. So we'll say Jason is the ISO for this one, right? And we'll put the person's name on there. And then the resource required, right? Specify resource needed, right? Let me scroll up. Is there an up button here? Resources required. There we go. I knew there's more to it, right? So specify the resource needed beyond current resources in order to mitigate this risk, right? So do you need something outside of what you normally have, what you have already, right, in order to mitigate this risk, right? No, in this case, it's just a document update. Now, let's say it was something that, like, you know, we need to buy a new encryption server, right? Well, we're going to need something beyond what we have already. We got to go buy a server. We got to buy the software. We need to list all that here. But in this case, we don't need anything outside of just Jason update the media protection policy, right? Overall remediation plan. We already went through that. So we can just copy and paste our recommendation for mitigation. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, same Same language. I'm not a fan of doing things twice, so I'm going to copy that. And what we had said before was that we would update the media protection policy to include a process for sanitizing media upon release and reuse, right? So we'll leave it at that. Now, original detection date. This is when was the weakness first detected. So we're going to put today because today is the first time that we actually saw it, right? And then we're going to say schedule completion date. This part is very important because the ISO, I do believe, is very critical to this part of the work because it's up to you, the ISO, to speak to the remediation personnel to say, hey, how long do you think it's going to be before you fix this? In this case, it's a document update, right? But first, before we even fill in the date, you need to, as the ISO in this case, I don't believe the assessor's job is to do this, right? This is more of an ISO's job. As an ISO, you don't just go, hey, when do you think you'll be done? You're like, 3 weeks. It's not that simple. I'm gonna skip over to column M because the column M talks about the milestones, right? And milestones mean what are the steps that you need to complete before you finish, before you accomplish, before you're done, basically. There should be at least 2. Right? At the very minimum, every POAM should have at least 2 milestones, okay? In this case of updating and drafting a document, I do believe the first step would be to update the media protection policy, right? And, I'm talking to Jason. Jason, when do you think you'll have that media protection policy updated to include the language we need?
Looking to work heavily on it this weekend, so hopefully it is by the top of the week.
Okay, so we're talking about the 13th.
Yes.
All right, so 3/13. So we put, and we want to follow this format, by the way. So 2023 03/13, and we'll put a colon, right, and then alt. All right, and then in my conversation, my mock conversation with Jason, after he updates it, he's gonna need to run it up for signature, right? Because he's the ISO. He's not the person that signs for it, right? So on Monday, he's gonna have it reviewed by his manager, let's say the ISSM, Information System Security Manager, and then they're gonna look at it and approve it, and then they're gonna run it up the chain because all formal document, like our policies, need to be signed by the AO, and then they're gonna have the AO do the final signature, right? So let's say they need a couple days, right, in our conversation. So we'll say 2023 03/15, review and approved from ISM, and then we'll put the third item, 2023. Sometimes execs need about a week. Why? So we'll give them 10 days because we want to give ourselves enough room to breathe. AO sign updated media protection policy, right? All right, those are the 3 steps, right? So come Monday, as the ISO that is following up on this with as a POAM manager, whatever, right? Unless Jason is the one following up with himself, right? If Jason's not the one that actually is tracking this POAM, on the 13th of Monday, I want to check with him. Hey, did you do the update yet? As if it's submitted, right? And on the 15th, I want to say, hey, did the ISM sign it? And then I want to make sure the AO signs it by the 25th, right? So which means we'll be done by the 25th. So you kind of want to work your way backwards. In my opinion, this column should be behind this one, but whatever. So we're going to put 03/25/2023 as a scheduled completion date, right? The next item is milestone changes. One of the things about POAMs, about security weaknesses, if you're going to, once it's been approved and it's stamped, right? It's an official POAM item. It should not be modified other than to be closed and to be done. If it is modified, there needs to be a record of modification. Why? Because this is a security weakness. Nothing here should change. Not the date, original detection date, not the date that you thought you were going to finish, not the milestones that you initially thought. Because you need a record to show that you guys are efficient in clean up your security weaknesses. And if there are changes, you need to be learning from them so you can become more efficient. So this column here says, let's say you come back and you're like, oh crap, you know what? We actually this is actually not the milestone, it's actually a milestone in between. There's a milestones for sending this up to the service desk team for them to review as well. Well, you can't just go ahead and edit this. You can't just keep editing stuff in the POAM report. You need to put milestone changes here. Say, hey, you know, this is the update, right? So obviously, this is the first time we're creating this milestone. There shouldn't be anything the milestone changes. The status date the POAM was last changed, which is the same day as we started it, right? Again, if we come back and we change something, we want to update this date, not this date, but this date. So then we know, oh, we started here, but we made the last change here. Vendor dependency, again, if this was something very technical where we need like Microsoft support or we need SonicWall support, Palo Alto support, this is where we're going to indicate which vendor we need. I don't know why this is right. So this is where we're going to indicate yes or no, right? For the vendor dependency. Are we dependent on them or yes or no? So we're going to say no in this case. It's just a document. And then the last vendor check-in date. When was the last time the vendor checked in with you for those support? You need to indicate that here. In this case, it's not relevant, so we'll put none. Oh, great. I guess they want dates. Maybe I should have done none, right? I could probably clean this up to put none, or you could just leave your stuff blank. It's up to you guys. Vendor dependent production name. Product name. Name of the product that is dependent on the vendor. So what is it that you need the vendor for, right? Is it a service? Is it a support service? Is it tech support? Is it an actual product? You need to indicate that here. Original risk rated, right? At this point, your SAR has already been approved and signed. Everyone agreed to it. So the original risk rating is low, right? Risk exposure level, right? So we had a list as a low. Now, in the future, right, let's say the system owner was like, why do we make that a low? That should be a moderate. Well, then if you're going to adjust it again, you never adjust the original record. You simply put the adjusted risk rating there, right? And if there was a risk adjustment, you say yes or no. In this case, it's a no. And they want to know if it's a false positive. Was it a security weakness that you thought was a weakness? Let's say later, 3 weeks later, we find out, oh, it's written right there in the media policy. The assessor didn't see it, the ISO didn't see it, it just slipped by us, right? Which means this now becomes a false positive, nothing needs to be fixed, right? You put yes or no, right? Or pending if you're still debating, right? In which case the POAM would close because it's a false positive. Operational requirement. If we don't fix this, are we at risk operationally? Do we find ourselves at a work stoppage? Like for instance, the risk could be, hey, we need to update this this version of Windows, otherwise, we have to shut it down, right? Then it become operational impacted. In this case, it's a document. It's not going to impact our operations whether we do it or not. Hey, how you doing? Hey, no, not today. Maybe later. But thank you though. Thank you so much. All right, Buenas noches. Deviation rationale, right? Why did you deviate, right? And this is not for the first time, obviously. If you were to come back to the same POAM item and you say, oh man, I had to change the stat, I had to change the false positive, or I had to change something, whatever you change, the milestones, you need to explain yourself here, right? And then supporting document. Are they supporting document that you need to add? In this case, I imagine your supporting document should be the media protection policy once it's been updated, right? That's your evidence that you did fix it. And the comments, any other comment you need to add? Auto approve is basically asking, a lot of organizations, their POAM policy says that, hey, if I, the ISO or whoever, create a POAM item, I will submit it to my boss. And if my boss doesn't approve or disapprove it within 30 days or a certain amount of time, it will auto approve itself, meaning it will become an official POAM, right? before it becomes an official POAM, you want to make sure that you're not causing yourself a lot of paperwork for no reason, right? So you don't want to be that ISO that's creating 500 poems. Well, guess what? Now you got 500 things to track, right? So anyways, it will auto approve if nobody approves it. I've seen a lot of organizations do that, and that's what this is. And auto approve no means that your boss actually says, yeah, this is good to go. This is a legitimate poem. Let's make it official. All right. Now this is asking whether this vulnerability is listed among the CISA. This part I'm not sure. I have to see if I'm not quite sure what this is. I don't know if anybody here knows this part. CISA known exploited vulnerability. I'm assuming we probably want to follow this link. Let me see here. There's something a little bit new. I'm not too familiar with this one. Let's see if we can do some discovery together here. Page not found. That's awesome. Oh, maybe I forgot something. Catalog. I forgot the G. Known exploit vulnerability catalog. Wow, as if we don't have enough stuff to track. All right, so they have the CVE number, which is good, right? This is more of a scanning, right? Maybe we'll do a scanning class, webinar series, and we'll go over scanning. But if you have the CVE number, it looks like, so I really won't worry about this for security control assessment. Usually when you run a scan, it'll give you the CVE number, so I imagine you just need to match it, right, with the CVE number. Dallas CSV. Okay, so it's only 10 entries. No, let's see, 100. How many pages are there? Are there more pages? No, this is it. Interesting. Interesting. Okay, well, there you have it. Download the CSV version. So this is the whole shebang. Okay. All right, so you probably download the CSV and you just do a search for your CVE number, right? But again, this is not about scanning, and I do believe that's what they're referencing here. So we'll just leave that blank. List if the vulnerability listed amongst CISA known. I'm guessing they probably have another. Yep, they have another website for that one. Yeah, again, we're not scanning. Associate CVE number. Again, if it was scanning. If not, we'll leave it blank for secure assessment. And that is it. That is it. This POAM report, right? The organization should be meeting frequently on a frequency, right? Whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, depending on your organization, people's bandwidth to have meetings, and how serious you want to task your teams to address these points. You certainly want to have your point of contacts attend those meetings. One of the things I like to do is make sure that I invite them, because if you don't invite them, they won't feel the pressure of you. Basically, I call it, corporate harassment to get them to fix it, because they need to be working towards fixing it. So you want to make sure you're tracking folks and they're keeping up with this. Okay. Again, for the purpose of the security assessment, you generally want to take the system POAM, the POAM associated with that system. You want to add it along with your security assessment report, along with your SSP and all your evidence. And you want to submit that to your authorizing official as your authorization package. The authorizing official will review the authorization package and determine if they're willing to accept all these risks that you have listed, and they're okay with the plan to remediate them. And if they're not, they need to issue a DATO, denial of authority to operate. And if they don't mind accepting the risk for the time being, then they issue an ATO, authority to operate, right? And then you become FISMA compliance, right? FISMA compliant doesn't mean that you have zero risk in your network. It just means that the people that are making the decisions are aware of all the risk on your network and they're willing to accept it and continue to operate as such. All right. And that is it, guys. That is POAM report in a nutshell. And that is the conclusion of security control assessment. Are there any questions?
I got two. What is resource required again?
Resource required. So now you specify resource needed beyond current resource. The keyword is beyond, right? If you already have all the resources you need here within the organization, you don't need to buy anything. You don't need to procure anything. You don't need to go through the process of getting something from external resources. Then you leave this blank. However, if you do need something outside of what you usually have access to, then you need to call that out here.
Okay. And then the other question is for the risk level, well, I know it's the ISO who gives tells you if it's high, low, right, or moderate. But when as an assessor, you got to make sure if it's correct. So, I mean, do you just copy what it says on the SSB, or you just I don't know. I'm quite confused in how we end up. Do we fill it out? Like,
So there are controls that ask you if there are controls that you assess that are related to security categorization.
right.
They certainly are, right? It's not, but we're not going to go and say, hey, I want to assess how you guys came up with a moderate system. As an assessor, we don't go looking for that. We assume that you guys have already done it. Because remember now, security categorization is somebody's opinion.
Right.
You could have all the important information on your system. If the system owner say, hey, this is a low system, then it's a low system. At the end of the day, it's their opinion, right? But we don't actually audit the BIA or the PTA or anything like that. We just assume that, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are security controls that might say, do you have a PTA, do you have a BIA? Do you have this, do you have that in regards to your security categorization? In which case, then you look for those evidence, but nothing specifically says that I need to assess step 1, I need to assess step 2 of the RMF. I hope that helps. That clarified.
I got a quick
Yes,
question.
it does. It's an opinion, so okay.
All right. Go ahead, Wilson.
Quick question. So when does the 30, 60, 90 come into play as far as the low, moderate, and high, as far as the dates to remediate? I know you talked to Jason and Jason gave you a date. But I know of the low, moderate, high, the 30, 60, 90. Does that come into play, or you have to just talk to the SO to get the dates?
So as far as the POAM is concerned, reality is reality, right? If Jason's not going to be able to get to it till a certain date, you can scream it needs to be done right away all you want. It's not going to get done, right? So you want a date that's realistic first and foremost. But I hear what you're saying though. There are times, and it usually deals with scanners, right? US CERT gives us, and I think you're on the call, right? I think you researched this before, right? In terms of US CERT recommendation, like if it's a low vulnerability versus a high. I'm trying to remember who researched it for me. Was that
Yes, yes, it was me.
Yeah, so what was US CERT's recommendation? Do you remember?
Please give me 1 second.
Okay. Yeah, so we generally go by the US CERT. Like we have a vulnerability management guideline that we go by. I could pull it up, but I'd rather have free sweat for it. But we go by US CERT recommendation. But at the end of the day, it's up to the organization, right? It's for you guys to say, hey, if we have a critical vulnerability, we must fix it by this date. High, moderate, low, it's really up to the organization. The organization should have a policy. Usually, maybe like for us, we have a document called Vulnerability Management Guideline, right? That lists out the priority and the date and the timeline to fixing things. And also, incident response plan or incident response policy usually should have that information. It should be defined somewhere in your organization.
Okay.
If it's not, it's your job to work with your system owner to make sure that you guys spell it out. But just like I had go back to US Cert and get their recommendation, you need to come with some credible evidence, right? Remember, you're the analyst. Give your system, don't just say, hey, system owner, what dates do you want? Like, hey, system owner, these are the best practices, right? This is what US Cert is doing. This is what the director of cybersecurity recommends. There's stuff out there that you can research, and then go to your system owner and say, hey, how do you want to proceed with this? And your system owner feels a lot better about making a decision because now they know what the best industry best practice is.
Okay, and that's
So
what you said.
Paul, I found it.
Yeah, what's up?
So for critical, if it's critical, then we would do it as soon as possible.
Right.
High is remediate in 30 days, moderate within 60, and low is within 90 days, if required by the system owner.
There you go. So that's US Cert recommendation, Woodson.
Okay.
Okay. Good question. Good questions. You bet. Any other questions, guys, before we wrap up? Okay. All right, guys. Well, it's been fun. Again, I'm going to be posting this webinar series on the website, so you guys can always go back and revisit. I really honestly believe if you follow the principles that we've laid out in these past 4 lectures, I really do believe you're well on your way to become a proficient assessor, right? But of course, it takes practice. Go through a whole STAR, right? If you guys recall, one of my recommendations to you guys, if you know a company, small company, any company for that matter, assess their security controls, right? Give them a free audit, right? Get your practice in, right? Or join us and join one of our programs, and we'll definitely give you the practice you want. But other than that, it's right there. It's all free information. You can get that, right? You can still do it. It's just a matter of running through the practice and the process, right? There's always a way where there's a will.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Now, when you say go give a small company assessment, how did you get, their controls? I'm assuming you just Google how we did the last time.
What do you mean by how do you get the controls?
Like, for example, we had Google one that was a access control policy, and we was able to assess it just, from Googling someone's policy.
Yeah. So what I would say is if you're going to take that advice and go find a small company that you want to help with the security, start with RMF step 1, right? Step 1 is basically categorization, right? Step 2 is selecting their security controls, having them selected. Step 3 is actually writing an implementation statement. As you're writing those implementation statement, you realize that they need an access control policy. They need this policy, they need that policy, or they need this procedure. Then you start drafting those, right? So it's going to take some time for you to run through RMF step 1 through 3. And then for step 4 through and 5, for step 4, you put on the hat of the assessor, you assess those controls, and then you basically put the authorization package together.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep.
Any other questions? We'll take one more before we close out.
Just one last one. Now, I know you said that all these videos will be on the website, so you just gotta go to the website and pull it up.
Yep, pjcourses.com. If you have the all access pass, you should have access to it. And then I'll have all that posted for you guys so you can go back and forth through it.
Okay.
All right. All right, y'all. Well, it's been fun. Let me know if you're on a WhatsApp group chat. Let me know what other topics you'd love to see. I don't mind doing a technical deep dive with you guys as well. So we might even do that. Maybe do some system auditing, vulnerability management. I don't know. Maybe we'll hack something. I don't know. You guys let me know what you'd like to see, and we'll do it. All right.
Thank you for your time.
All right. You bet. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, Paul. You too.
Later.